Tell me about your childhood, Joel.
I grew up in like rural Massachusetts in this small town called Belchertown.
Oh,
So it doesn't strike me as a place that's all that exciting, especially when I was a kid. But I think I've grown more fond of it as I've gotten older. It's a very quaint little town that also happens to be like the second biggest town in Massachusetts by land mass. There's like a ton of
wow.
space because it's just a bunch of fields and stuff. But yeah, I grew up there, and my mom and my dad moved there, and then they got divorced pretty like the first year we were there. So
Okay.
pretty young divorce, and I was so young I barely comprehended what was going on. I'm just like, oh, I have two houses now, and I always feel like if a divorce happens, it was meant to happen, and it's better for the kids. I think growing up, I always saw a lot of my friends' parents seem very unhappy, and they were like just staying together for the kids' sake. But that seemed to be bringing more negativity into the house than anything. So I'm grateful that happened because it led to my dad living in a very tiny, nice cottage on this road called Forest Lake Road, which is just a little quiet road in the middle of nowhere. And I have great memories there. We were there for about 6 years. And I could go on. I don't know where you want me to go specifically in my childhood because this is like I'm about to go into a biography here. So let me know if there's any specific direction.
Did you live with your mom and dad? Like, did you split it up for the year, or was it like weekends you went somewhere, or?
It was pretty well weekends at my dad's, and
Okay.
weeks school weeks during my mom's, primarily because my mom lived in the town that the bus picked us up in. She lived in our school's town, and my dad lived one town over. So
Did you have a
but
lot of siblings?
yeah, I have one older brother. He's 2 years older.
Okay.
um we were super close growing up and kind of grew apart a little as we got older, but still love that guy. Love my brother. We're very different and very similar. I think we're both very creative and have way too many ideas, and we just have very different like mediums that we explore those ideas in, as well as uh I guess different life paths. I guess would be the most normal way to put it.
What's a fond memory for you in your childhood? Is there a particular time or moment or place that you just really think fondly of whenever you think about it?
My brain goes immediately to Forest Lake Road, which I mentioned. It was just such a quaint little house, and my dad got a miniature dachshund named Gigi, a little wiener dog, and she was just like a ball of energy. She could run faster than any person, and the funniest thing is she kind of became the streets dog because she was just run away and run up the street. And on any given night we'd get a call from a neighbor that's like, "Hey, Gigi's here tonight," and we'd be like, "Okay, you could keep her." you know. So that's a nice memory. Gigi was a spunky little dog, and just
Hmm.
like I think I'm glad I grew up somewhere so remote and quiet. As my life has gone on, I've definitely spent more time in cities and the like, and it just feels a little hectic and loud. And I have this thing that maybe I aspire to, or this thing that I know I could escape to if I need to. Like, I have a reverence and a love for the quiet and the calm, which
Hmm.
I think is a good thing to keep in sight. Because if I only knew cities like some of my friends, I might go insane.
Yeah.
Or maybe I wouldn't because I wouldn't know the alternative. You know, maybe it's depending on.
Did
Yeah.
you, is there a conversation you had with your mom or your dad that impacted you that you either still think about, or advice they gave you that was like, yeah, that's something I carry with me, or it could be negative. Maybe there was something they said that has impacted you.
Um, I don't know. I don't really remember specific conversations, but I do think that their parenting style in general led to who I am. They
Hmm.
were both incredibly supportive of me just doing what I love. And they had very little hang-ups as far as like me wanting to be a filmmaker from like the age of 8. Like I was very set on that path from a young age, and I did not I think going to film school, meeting other artists as I grow up, I think the hardest thing for a lot of people is just not having that support network and not having supportive parents who kind of trust you to do your thing. Because
Yeah.
I see how that discourages people and holds them back in a lot of ways. And I feel very lucky to have had two parents who believed in me from a young age and just wanted me to have a good life. And you know, and I don't know where it comes from. I think my mom was a nurse, and I think she always had more creative aspirations that she wishes she pursued. So I think
Hmm.
that kind of leads her to wanting me to do my thing. And my dad was a very artistic, creative guy, but he did it through cabinet making. He was an artisanal cabinet maker, but he was just
Um,
super creative and so driven. I get my workaholicness from him, which I've happily gone easy on over the last couple of years, but there's been times where I do nothing but work for months on end. And he was the same way with his cabinets. He would just get on a project and do it till it was done. And but I'm very grateful for their parenting style above all else. There's many great funny memories and conversations and things and formative moments, but nothing that stands out to me as like something that made me who I am more than just how they were and how they
hmm.
carried themselves and how they approach my interest and stuff like that.
Now, if you like wrote a book on your life up to this point, what do you think you'd call it?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. Slowly learning that life is okay. I think that's what I'd call it. That
Why would you call it that?
because I love that lyric from "Take on Me" by Aha. Uh, but the slow version, the acoustic MTV Unplugged version, makes me cry like a baby. But there's the line "stumbling away, slowly learning that life is okay," and I think life is a process of coming to terms with the things that make it feel not okay, and then realizing that everyone goes through these things, and everyone has their own battles, internal and external. And I guess that would be a good title, because I have very sad chapters in my life and very happy and creative chapters, and sometimes sad and creative chapters. And
Yeah, sometimes it goes
they
together, right? Yeah.
yeah, sometimes the creativity is fueled by the sadness. And yeah, I think that'd be a good title. I guess I've never thought of giving my life until now a title, but that's what came to mind first. Aha.
What oh, you would name it Aha or Slowly Life is
Oh no, Aha is the band name
okay,
of
I was like,
Take
wait a
On Me.
second.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, what do you think right now, like in this season of life you're in, is the most beautiful thing about living?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I always like to keep this mindset that no matter what I'm going through, no matter what I'm processing and feeling, I try to keep in sight that like my life has been the best story I'll ever be told. And my favorite movies, like a lot of my favorite scenes and moments in movies are the sad ones and the ones that like shift the character and impact the character. So trying to conceptualize my life a little bit as a story that's being told to me allows me to take the sadness in stride and take the happiness as it comes. Because the most beautiful thing I think right now is the uncertainty. I think I just don't know where I'm going to wind up. I've lived in LA for the last almost 2 years now, and I've never pictured myself winding up there. And I really don't like the city. but I also have a lot of amazing friends there, which make it worth staying at. So it's an uncertainty. Like I know I want to wind up somewhere quiet and I want to get a house and settle down a little eventually, but I don't know what that looks like and when that's coming. And I think learning to roll with it rather than try to over plan has been probably the most beautiful thing right now, because I'm trying to I rather let life happen to me a little rather than trying to over control my life,
Mm.
and then take the moments that you can to do something purposeful or when it comes. But so it's not total complacency and it's not total apathy either. It's like you still have to be ready to act and do things. But I also think sometimes too much prep can just lead to disappointment or something else.
Hmm. What do you think is the hardest thing about living right now?
That's a good question. I think in a similar way, some of the uncertainty, that there's been a lot of things in my life that have been proven to be impermanent that I thought were like the best things,
Mm.
and things that come and go and disappear. And whether that's like losing a loved one or something like that, or uh, I think there's an impermanence. Like sometimes I just get sad over the thought that like I'll never be a kid again. Like I can never be that innocent and that free again in that regard. And I think
Mm.
that makes me sad too. But I don't know. I think there's a number of hard things just about the day to day existence. But like I said, if I take a step back and realize that my life has been these high highs and low lows and a lot of quiet days, I realize that it's not going to be so bad, and and I'll get over the things I can't have anymore, the things that have moved past my life, and learn to cherish that when I did have them, like cherish the being a kid at one point, or cherish like having time with my dad, or cherish this or that.
Did your dad pass away?
Yeah, he passed away at the end of 2019.
Okay.
uh yeah, and today's his birthday actually, so happy
Oh,
birthday to him.
wow.
Yeah. He How old would he have been? He would have been 60. I think he was 40 years older than me, so I think he would be 67, which
So
is
he
funny.
died young then, relatively.
Yeah, relatively. He died at 63. Cancer. Yeah, he
Okay.
died from cancer. It was his third battle with cancer. He beat the first
Wow.
two miraculously. The first time he had cancer, he was had a 5% chance to live, which is crazy. So, and that was when I was like too young to remember, like 3 or 4. So
Wow.
I'm there. I feel very lucky to have gotten 20 more years with him, where I remember having this amazing, great dad. Because I could have easily never even remembered having a dad, which would have been a very different life.
Did his cancer, was it the same one that just reoccurred over time, or?
I, to my understanding, it was a little different,
Okay.
and perhaps caused by the radiation from the previous treatments.
Mm.
Because to beat his first round of cancer, he got a lot of
I'm
extreme
sure.
radiation,
Yeah.
and then the second round was a little easier, I think, but even then, and I think it just cycles back. It's all, it's like it's really buying time in some cases with cancer. You're never going to fully cure it. You're just buying time to keep living, and it'll come back eventually. And
Yeah.
I but yeah, losing him was definitely the biggest like upset of my life. I don't know what to call it. The biggest I don't want to say tragedy, but something like that of my life. And
How
so
did you
far,
how did you process him dying?
it was a very long, quiet couple of weeks.
Hmm.
I think finding out how quiet grief is was a really powerful thing. Is that like it's not like the night it happened was like an explosion of emotion, and I cried louder and screamed louder at the top of my lungs than I ever have. But the following couple weeks were very just at his house, it feeling empty and quieter, and he was best friends with all my friends, so they were just all there with me, and all grieving too, and we just like quietly sat around for 3 weeks. People would bring us food, and like people definitely are there for you when you're grieving, which is nice. But yeah, people brought us food, and we just kind of played some video games, hung out, and tried our best to laugh at times, but sometimes it's hard to laugh. But
Yeah.
I think there's a permanence with death that allows you to compartmentalize it a little faster, I feel like, than like some other forms of grief. I think death, there's an understanding that it's the end, which makes it really hard at first, but then you're like, okay, this isn't going to change. I'm not getting this person back. So I have to learn to live for my sake. I have to, I can't let this put, like pump the brakes on my entire life. I need to, so after about a month of that sort of sad feeling back home, I went back to New York, and I'm just like, I'm going to pick up where I left off, because all my dad ever wanted for me was to be a filmmaker and to pursue my dreams. And at the time, like since then, I've found success doing what I do, but at the time, my dad never saw me achieve financial success or any sort of stability with my creativity. And in a way, that's more beautiful to me, because my all of his friends would tell me how proud he was of me for just doing what I love to do. And it always rang as a little silly to me, because I'm like, I'm just like cranking out like 2 or 3 short films a week, and only like 50 people are watching them. But that was enough for him just to have fun. And he loved acting in them. And I think that feels really special, that like he never saw me succeed, but was still so immensely proud of me. Succeed in the traditional sense, like
Right.
there's tons of personal success in just the act itself, and sharing yourself, and having fun with each other and creating together. But yeah, he never saw me experience a level of financial or career success that would show that this thing was going to work out. But still, he believed in me and believed in it, and never said anything but great things about all the films we made together and the fun we had. And
What do you,
yeah,
what do you think life means? Like, I know, everyone obviously has their own opinion on this, but for you, like, why are you living? What's the purpose behind it?
that's a good question. I've had some experiences that lead me to grander metaphysical answers that I don't think I could put into words right, so I won't. And then I sometimes pull back, and I realize that life is just about, the experience. It's about living this story, being this person, and the ups and downs that come with that, and taking it all in stride, and realizing that like we're all in this together. We're all sharing a story, but we're also all getting our own immensely personal story that, you know, in a way it feels like terribly lonely, that like people will never truly get a glimpse into what your story is and what it feels like to live that story. But in another way, that's incredibly special, because it's like no one else is going to get to be Joel. No, that's a comforting thought. And there's a lot of universal qualities that we live through it, that we do kind of understand each other. There's a level where we could empathize and understand, even if the specifics are different. But I think if there's a point to life, it's to try your best to spend your time doing things that feel fulfilling, and try your best to keep the people you love close, and to find the people that love you fully for who you are, and to spend time spend that fulfilling time with those people.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it seems. I think there's a lot of grander questions about what the meaning of life is, but I think what for me it's just to try your best to not even enjoy it, just try your best to experience it in a enriching way, because
Hmm.
you're not gonna enjoy every moment, every day, every event, but you could at least, like, in the same way that a sad movie would maybe enrich my life, life could be enriched by its sadness, and you can be enriched by the hardships as well as you would the happy times, I guess.
Do you have what's your favorite sad movie?
that I Pretty well. Like, I have a on the website Letterbox, which is like where you log movies and stuff. Uh, I have a list of my top 100, and
Wow.
I guarantee at least like 80 of those are pretty sad. But my favorite movie, and I always go back to it, is Love Streams, and this is a
Huh.
movie by John Cassavetes. He was a filmmaker from the 50s to the 80s, and he
Hmm.
died pretty young in the 80s. But he was a very like renegade rebel sort of filmmaker. He made what are like many consider to be like the first like American independent films. He
Wow.
he he like bought a camera and made films with his friends and retained ownership of a lot of his films. And in the same way that I definitely preach and love independence and creating online, he sort of was doing that in a time where it was arguably much harder to do it. And one of the people he made his movies with was Jenna Rowlands, who was his wife. And for years and years, like, she would star in all of his movies. And then he got the prognosis that he was dying. He had 6 months to live. So they made one last movie together called Love Streams. And it's a very beautiful outpouring of their love for each other, and uh,
Huh.
are wrestling with trying to understand what love is and what it means. And it's kind of beautiful because it doesn't come to an answer. It's just like one final battle with love until and fortunately, I think he wound up living quite a bit longer than the prognosis, but yeah, it was his last movie. So
Love
there's
Street.
definitely,
I gotta look it up.
yeah, his stuff's very it's different than a lot of what you see. It's much more concerned with characters and conversations. There's not these grander
Huh.
plot beats and narratives. It's just these people kind of doing doing the wrong thing and then like grappling with that, or people arguing and then feeling bad about arguing. It is like these little moments, and that carry so much weight, but they're not like a plot point and like what you would see in a Hollywood movie, which is
Right.
much more structured. Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Okay, I gotta look that up because that sounds really interesting. I would like that. I do really like enriching character development and like dialogue heavy kind of movies.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
have any favorites?
whew.
They, they don't even have to be sad.
I lean more toward you actually. I really do like sadder.
Okay, yeah.
Um, I guess two would be one is I don't know at Fathers and Daughters. It talks about how a relationship between a father and his daughter impacts her life with relationships with men in general. Um,
Hmm.
and that's just like fascinatingly interesting to think about. Um, and then the other one was more recent. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like Women Talking is what it's called, and it's literally
I heard about it.
yeah, it's that's literally what the movie is. Ladies
The
talk.
movie's in the title.
Yeah, but they talk about pain and struggle and how they're reconciling that with their faith, and like that's just really interesting as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
uh,
probably
I'll have to
those
see
two.
that. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I highly
Yeah.
recommend. It was really good. Um,
Yeah.
Now what do you think? life wise, like what do you want to do? Like is there something you still haven't achieved that like you really want to achieve, or there's a goal you have that you really want to get to?
Uh, it, I think there's like two types of goals. There's like career goals, and then like well, three types of goals. I'd say like career, creative, which sometimes overlap. In my case, these days they often overlap because
Yeah.
creating is my career. But and then there's the personal goals of like get a house, find a wife, settle down. But for me, I try not to keep too many big goals because I know how that could often make the little things and make it. I think if I focus too hard on a really big goal, it makes it harder to appreciate the little baby steps.
Yeah.
It makes it harder to appreciate like each week I make a film. And if I spent my whole life thinking like, oh, I have this one film I want to make, all those films would just feel like, something to do while I wait to make this actual thing I want to make. And I just try not to operate that way. I try to be like the thing I'm working on right now is like my project. The people I'm with are the people I want to be with. The and I think that makes life much more much more satisfying and much less disappointing because
Mm.
often if we have a goal and we're failing to get there, I think that's where a lot of disappointment stems from. um, but if I did have goals, it would be to continue to create freely and make what I want to make, and use my platform to show that like you can make, because I've made a quite a number of like feature length independent $0 movies on the internet. And a huge part of what I want to do is just show people that that's possible, that they don't have to wait for permission to make a movie. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of what I want to do. I just want to
Mm.
inspire people to create freely and not be beholden to like gatekeepers and not be beholden to people who tell them to wait their turn, because I think creating every day it's getting easier and easier
Yeah.
to create and release your own stuff and try your best. I don't think it's easy to get attention. I don't think it's easy to earn money off your stuff, but I think it's
Yeah.
at least easy to make it, which
Correct.
is like feels a little simplistic, but I do think that's like a pretty important thing, because there's been times in history where it was much harder to just actually do something. So
Yeah.
it's a yeah.
Is there a time in history that you live in, if not now?
Mm, I just thought about this the other day a little, and my mind goes to not really, because I think what I'm doing is so specific to this time that it's hard to picture
Yeah.
anything else. Like I love YouTube. I love creating this way, and I love like if I was in the '80s, I'd like to think my brain would cause me to be more like John Cassavetes, where I'd still try to find a way to create independently, even if it was much harder. But I think just as far as progress goes, where we're like just as far as like social progress and things like that, we're always getting better. So any step back would feel like such a step back, as far as like even just little things that would be worse, like I think less so than living in another time. I think I'd have more of a curiosity to just peek my head in and look around. Like I love the idea of just looking back and peeking at like a medieval battlefield and being like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's crazy. That's crazy that happened," or
But just close the
just
door after that. I'm good.
yeah, then close the door. But or like being in the '60s, going to Woodstock or something, just like catching a wind of the feel of the time without having to be stuck there. I think is probably more preferable to me.
Do you have something about the world now? One thing that you'd change if you could?
It sounds overly simplistic, and I guess that's because it is. But I would like to see a world where people are less beholden to labor and work, And I think like the 5 day work week, especially in the United States, is so toxic and horrible, and it just is leading to so much dissatisfaction and unhappiness across the world. Just like the need to do all these menial jobs, and I don't know what the solution is, but it's like I personally feel like a lot of these jobs and products that we produce and stuff like that are extraneous and unnecessary. And I'm like, if we just like shut down like a 3/4 of the jobs, I think we'd be fine. And then we just could divide the work among ourselves and work 2 days a week or something. But that's like a very utopian, idealistic way, because of course these corporations have a lot of power, and the government is definitely designed to keep us working, and it wants us to be responsible workers. So it's hard to break out of that. Um, but I would like to see a future where, I ideally, there's a lot of like scary stuff about AI and like industrialization being like increased to such rapid efficiency. But ideally, that could just mean we have to work less. It doesn't seem to be the way it's going, but it's like if you could produce like stuff in a factory 100 times faster using 1/10 the labor, you'd think that just means that, wow, great, now we don't have to work as much. But there's a sort of obsession with this idea that robots and technology are replacing our jobs rather than like making us have less jobs so then we're freer. But it's like, well, we need to find another job and people need to be working. And I think this is why people fight for stuff like universal basic income and stuff, because it would just provide people with a level of freedom and comfort. But I don't know. I guess that would be it. Just let people work less.
Yeah, because the stress of making money is always very present, right? To live, to pay
Yeah,
things, and that is
yeah,
very stressful. And
yeah,
then you're right, then you've got the people who become workaholics too, and then it's like they always work because they can't stop working, or things get too
yeah.
big and there's just so much to do. Yeah.
And it's like, what are you working for? Because if you're gonna do it every day till the
Yeah.
day you die, it's like, are you just living to work? Are you? Yeah, it kind of definitely. And even with my own stuff, I try to catch myself if I'm feeling that way. Like if I'm just creating that week to get in the video and keep my self alive. I try to make it more a compulsion, like try to make it more something I actually want to do each week.
Mhm.
And because I do run the risk of some weeks feeling like, okay, I just got to get something out, and but yeah, work can be a slippery slope, and I try my best to avoid
Yeah,
that
it's
feeling.
especially when you're independently creating. Like I get that too. It's like there's gotta always be, you gotta be out there because if it's too long a pause, then people forget who you are, or they forget to, there's just like
Yeah,
all the time. It's just, you know, that is, and then as you said, like trying to balance that with passion of like, well, I love doing this, or I want to put this out there, I want it to be good. But then also the time element and the people element and the audience, it's like, yeah, it's such a hard balance. I'm not quite sure I've even figured it out myself.
yeah. I do feel that pressure as well. That it's like if you can't take a break because people will forget about you, and there's so much competing for people's attention these days that and once you have it, you got to keep it. You have to, and I don't know. I feel like even if my views went down back to what they used to be, I know I'd still be doing it. I don't know what I would do for money in that case. Even if my views went down to 100, I know I'd still be making stuff and throwing it out there. And I don't think that'll happen because I feel like I'm in a pretty secure place where I have people who believe in me and follow me wherever I go. And that's a very fortunate thing to have. Like,
Yeah.
I'm somebody who kind of makes whatever the hell I want, which is not what the internet likes. The internet likes you to have your thing and to do that thing on loop. But fortunately, I've I put in the work to earn myself an audience that understands, like, a Joel upload is whatever Joel wants to make. A Joel upload isn't just an animation. It's not just this or that, you know. And there's obviously things that do better than others, but I really just care about my core fans at the end of the day, the people who are there wherever I go and will ebb and flow with my weird experiments and stuff. But
What do you think, two more questions for you. What do you think in nature? Because I know you were talking about how you love the country.
yeah.
What thing in nature, maybe in the country specifically, like really speaks to you that you really love learning about or looking at?
It comes to nature, I think the natural beauty is the most obvious one. Just like it feels a little less chaotic and noisy than a city, and a little less stressful. And I think you're just further away from that working mindset. You know, if you're in New York or LA, there's a sort of hustle to everything. It's like you're not just hanging with your friends, you're creating, you're brainstorming, you're
Yeah,
doing this or that, and everyone has their own projects, and you know, you'll talk about what they're working on as much as uh anything else. And I feel like growing up in a small town, you just goofed around a lot. You know, you just didn't care, and that's part of being a kid too. But I don't think you have to lose that.
yeah,
You get to just kick your feet up and not really worry about things for a little. And I feel nature brings that out of you. It's like if you're just sitting around a fireplace in a backyard, the last thing you want to talk about is your job. You know,
yeah,
I've, and and also just the general feeling that like you step outside and you're still in your house. I always say this, but living in a city or in an apartment, the second you go out that door, you're in public. You know, like the second you go out your front door, you're in public. And it's nice to have a yard. It's nice to have like, oh, I'm outside, but it's still my house and it's still relatively private at least, you know. And, versus like this like couple inch door being your
yeah,
barrier between privacy and just full blown chaos of public, you know. So that's another part of nature I like, and why I hope to find maybe a quieter place someday.
hmm. And then the last question for you is what piece of music do you think, or song, maybe you said it earlier because you mentioned for your autobiography, but you think describes your personality, like who you are?
I similar to movies, I listen to a lot of sad songs, but I don't think I'm a sad person. I am a sad person. I'm sad and I'm happy and I'm multifaceted, but I don't think I'm not as sad as the music I listen to. You know, as a person to be around, I'm not as draining and sad as what I choose to listen to. So it's my mind, as far as a piece of music that represents me. Um, I've always felt a sort of affinity with Billy Joel,
Yeah,
and mainly because my mom named me after him. She's a huge Billy Joel fan, but she chose the last name rather than the first name. But Billy Joel seems to have a playfulness while still talking about very serious things in a very like grandiose way. Like I like how he's such a performer and he's so grand, but he's also gives himself room to have levity and playfulness. And I don't know which song of his I would choose, but I think like just the way you are is so sweet, and
yeah,
you know the entertainer. I don't know. There's a lot of good songs that, but as far as describing me personally, I'm not sure, but I feel an affinity towards him for most of my life. So
yeah. No, his music is good.
yeah.